The American justice system has been in need of major reforms for a long time. Here is a list of what I think the main reform should be. These are just some of the ideas I've had as a layman. Reform number 1: make drugs legal at the federal level. In this reform, possession and sale of all drugs would be made legal. Not only that, but the government would grow and manufacture all drugs and then sell them at the cheapest price possible. My logic is the negative aspects of drug use are punishment enough. As for the government selling drugs at cost, this would reduce dangers from manufacturing certain drugs and remove the main incentive to be a drug dealer. This would gut the gangs and the cartels around the world, or force them to reform into more manageable corporations. I would have the drugs taxed, and the taxes would be used for rehab and to do research for curing drug addiction. Reform number 2: sex work should be made legal at the federal level. The next reform is to make sex work legal at the federal level. Right now, the main motive for treating sex work as a crime is to fill women's prisons. Johns are rarely ever in prison for hiring a sex worker. I also think most sex workers do sex work to support their drug habit. So by having the drugs already be a low price, that would reduce the amount of sex workers. Note, sex trafficking would still be illegal. Reform number 3: work-focused welfare. My next idea is kind of complex, but I'll do my best to explain it. There would be a government agency that adults can go to that will provide the necessities of life at the cost of having to work a 40-hour work week. They would also be paid minimum wage. The first reason is this would provide a safety net for the poor. It'd be an alternative to crime or homelessness. The second is it would provide structure for former prisoners who have been institutionalized. This would prevent recidivism and would allow the prisoners to save up a cushion for their return to society. Third, this would allow the prisons we have already constructed to be used, so this would reduce the amount of political resistance to my reforms. Reform number 4: fines should be based on income. I think fines should be based on an income and should not exceed more than 10% of the individual's weekly income. Fines that are at a flat rate for everyone are basically just laws for the poor. I think this would also reduce the chance of local government using fines to support their budget, since poor people won't have that much to pay and rich people can afford a lawyer to defend themselves. So they would only give fines as a real punishment instead of as a source of revenue. Reform number 5: remove bail bonds. A bail bond is when an alleged criminal is forced to pay money to ensure they come back for their court date. If they come to their court date, then they will get their bail money back, and if not, they lose it. I think bail should be removed because a person is either a flight risk or not. If they aren't a flight risk, let them go, and if they are, force them to stay. I think in the future, ankle bracelets will be so advanced that they will be able to reduce the risk of flight, and only criminals who are too dangerous will be forced to stay in jail. Reform number 6: all law enforcement agents are forbidden to lie. This is something that many people already think is the case, but it's not actually true. The police can and will lie to you, and it's not a crime for them. However, it is a crime for you to lie to the police. Once I found out about this, I found it impossible to ever trust a police officer, even an off-duty one. I think the police have really underestimated the lack of trust this policy has resulted in. This is why whenever there is a police scandal and no body cam, people automatically are skeptical of the police officer. Reform number 7: better vetting of police officers. This seems to me to be a no-brainer, but people with anger issues, mental problems, and bigots shouldn't be allowed to be police officers. However, that is not the case, and often seems to be the reverse. I think the best vetting is to do annual tests for mental illness. I would also force the police officers to go to tolerance and anger management seminars by themselves. Sending a specialist to the police station so they can all goof around together will change nothing. Reform number 8: deaths that involve the police are reviewed by a federal law enforcement agency. Right now, every time a police officer kills someone, it is reviewed by their supervisor. This is an obvious conflict of interest. I think these cases should be reviewed by the FBI or another federal organization. As for the FBI, I think any deaths they cause should be reviewed by Congress. Conclusions: I think these reforms will greatly improve public safety and allow society to best utilize the police force. I don't think they will happen because the majority of people don't care what the police do as long as they don't bother them personally. I think in the future, all the police will eventually be replaced by robots or something similar, and we won't have the type of problems we have now. That is a long ways away. Do you think the police need reforms, or are you happy with our current justice system? Tell me down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.